From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Happy Tuesday, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Let's fix this screen a little bit and get this story front and center for y'all because we've got a packed show today. Packed. A lot of stuff going on in the world of cybersecurity, so don't go anywhere. Also, we're going to be talking about how the grand jury has just added further indictments to the former Uber CSO. So he was charged with one thing. He's now being charged with a lot more things. He's in fact facing a long time in jail if he's found guilty. And we'll talk about that here, so don't go anywhere. We're also going to talk about phishing toolkits that bypass two-factor authentication, Shutterfly, and a new logging tool post-exploitation. We'll also talk about the Babuk ransomware and a lot more on today's show. But before we do that, shout-outs. Let's get to Eddie from Dallas, Texas. Brent, good morning to you. Morning to Mr. Matt Lee. Good morning to Miss Jackson, and she's got 3 cups of coffee. So, wow, good for you. Mr. Fallon, Irish Cream Coffee Cup, cheers. I can't wait. I've got a special coffee today. Finley, good morning to you as well. Taylor, good morning. Josh Mason, the awesome individual, good morning to you, good sir. My guest from yesterday, Mr. McQuiggan, good morning and thank you for being here. Vladimir, shalom, and how are you doing? Dave B, good morning, and no coffee just yet, just water. Cheers. We'll cheer to water. And Aaron, good morning to you as well. So here we go. Before we get into today's show, though, I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to our friends over at KnowBe4, who without their support, this show would not be possible. So go check out more about them in the show notes. All the stories we're going to be talking about today are available in the show notes. So please make sure to subscribe and follow us on your favorite podcast listening platform. Good morning to Mr. El Bayati. How are you doing, good sir? And good morning from Minnesota. I've got to see who that is. That's Laura. Laura, good morning to you as well. All right, folks. Before we do that, my lovely, beautiful cup of, I've got a single espresso today. I know it's single, but I've had like 2 doubles already. So I needed something to like keep me leveled headed. So my single espresso today is actually a Turkish blend. So some of my favorite coffee cup cheers. Let's get into this new man-in-the-middle phishing toolkits, where a team of academics have found at least 1,200 of them deployed in the wild that are capable of intercepting and allowing cybercriminals to bypass two-factor authentication security codes. Now, shameless plug, if you go to our YouTube channel, just literally last week, I put out the webinar I did with Roger Grimes on hacking MFA. We talked about this. So when I saw the story today, I was like, wow, if you have not seen my webinar with Roger Grimes on hacking MFA, you should. Roger's written the book on hacking MFA. The guy knows what he's talking about. Go and check it out. The direct result was threat actors who managed to trick users into entering credentials on a phishing site also found that the stolen credentials became useless since they couldn't bypass two-factor authentication. There's what I like to call a funny line in security, right? The funny line in security is if you do two-factor authentication and use a password manager, you eliminate 99% of the threat. Yeah, I'm going to call bullshit on that one. All right, now we're a family show, but I'll explain this in just a moment. For the past few years, cyber criminals have been adapting to two-factor authentication. The first known was real-time phishing. And real-time phishing, for those of you who've ever tried to sell anything online, is significant. One, there's a lot of different ways where someone will try to phish someone on the other end. And the way they do that is they'll ask you, oh, yeah, I'm sending you a code to make sure you're real. Send me the code. But really, they're trying to phish you through that code. They already got your information. They're trying to phish you. I've documented that. It's really, really fascinating the way they do it. There's also actually stealing the token, the online token. Once you've got the online token, you might be able to replicate that token at login in some cases. So what we're seeing here now is that they're essentially able to use man-in-the-middle phishing toolkits that not only steal your session code, but also enter credentials and forward a two-factor authentication by hijacking it. We've seen SIM swapping techniques. We've seen advanced where they've got spyware. If you're using Android, one of the more popular ways this is done on Android is they'll have you download an app that seems completely legitimate. That completely legitimate app has on the bottom has a screen recording and key recording feature, and it's taking everything in. Once it sees the two-factor code come through, they go right into it. And Mr. Matley is correct. EvilGenix is one of them. All right. Murena is another one, and Moodly Shuka is another one. So these are all gaining popularity, which tells you got to know how to deploy and manage two-factor authentication. And whatever you do, please don't use text. Whatever you do, don't use text. There's nothing worse than a text message for two-factor authentication. Nothing. All right. Let that be the story here. Shutterfly says that the ransomware attack that they experienced has impacted manufacturing. So if you've ordered stuff from Shutterfly, you might be looking at a little bit longer since it impacted their manufacturing and corporate systems. Some of the downstream victims were Borrow Lenses, Groovebook, LifeTouch, Shutterfly, Snapfish, Spoonflower, and Tiny Prints. So all of that is impacted, showing you that ransomware isn't just about data and money. Sometimes you can also get your production hurt there as well. So quick question here from Aaron. Let's get to that. How does a VPN help here, or something like IPsec? So VPN, in theory, right? Not in theory, in practicality, is just hiding where you're from. It's just giving you a cover, right? It's creating a virtual network, almost very similar to a virtual desktop. However, IPsec is a direct connection between your VPN to a program you're trying to get access to. That still doesn't eliminate the fact that two-factor authentication is still needed there. It doesn't impact it at all. VPN has very little to do with that. Very, very little to do with it. VPN is one thing, but it doesn't defend against this type of man-in-the-middle attacks. It just essentially makes sure that your traffic remains anonymous, unless you're using free VPN. Then ask yourself, how are they making money? Experts are detailing a logging tool of DanderSpritz framework used by the Equation Group hackers. Security researchers have offered a detailed glimpse into a system called Dubber feature that's dedicated to logging the different stages of post-exploitation stemming from the deployment of DanderSpritz, a full-feature malware framework used by the Equation Group. DanderSpritz came to light in 2017, started lost in translation. It also included leaks was Eternal Blue, the exploit by the NSA, and much, much more, not Petya, and many other. The tool itself is modular, it's stealthy, and it's a full functional framework that relies on dozens of plugins for post-exploitation activities on Windows and Linux hosts. Double feature is one among them, which functions as a diagnostic tool for victim machines, carrying DanderSpritz, according to researchers. The double feature could be used as a sort of Rosetta Stone for better understanding DanderSpritz module and systems compromised by them. It's an incident response team's pipe dream, according to the report. Something very, very interesting. You should read the full report. I found it to be quite enlightening and something definitely worth taking a look at. Also, organizations have been targeted with the Babuk-Based Rook ransomware. So this emerged in late November. It already has 3 victims, one of them a Kazakh financial institution and several others. The ransomware is being distributed via third-party framework like Cobalt Strike, but SentinelOne's Sentinel Labs researchers say that phishing emails carrying Rook have been observed as well. Once executed, the victim's machine, the malware attempts to terminate all processes that may impede the encryption process. The attackers also attempt to disable security products as well as delete volume shadow copies to prevent victims from recovering their data. That's why cold storage is so important in the ransomware age or era that we're in. Both malware families use the same API to retrieve service name and status. They enumerate all services to stop those in a hard-coded list. The same functions to enumerate running processes and terminate those in a hard coded list is also there. The Windows Restart Manager API for process termination and similar code for drive enumeration both perform a series of environmental checks as well. This one, keep your eyes out for it. Sentinel-1 has a good write-up as well. And this one, if you're exploring to become a CISO, want to become a CSO. Well, if you don't know this story, back in 2016, Uber was breached. The CSO at the time, Joe Sullivan, used various tools to not disclose the breach internally, meaning he didn't even share it internally. He kind of communicated with the threat actors himself and paid them off that way. Well, that led to a charge. He was arrested, and now there's been more added to it. So a federal grand jury has expanded the list of charges filed against the former chief security officer of Uber, who's accused of a criminal data breach cover-up. Joe Sullivan, who's 52, who served as the Uber CSO from April 2015 through November of 17, faces new charge of wire fraud over a 2016 hack of the ride-sharing service, which resulted in the exposure of 57 million user and driver records. Sullivan now serves as the CSO for Cloudflare. The Department of Justice first announced in August of 2020 that Sullivan has been charged with obstruction of justice and deliberately concealing a felony. If convicted of those charges, he could face 8 years in prison and a $500,000 fine. On Wednesday, the DOJ announced that a federal grand jury has handed down a superseding indictment, adding a third charge, 3 counts of wire fraud, tied to Sullivan having allegedly attempted to defraud 600,000 Uber drivers by failing to inform them that their driver license numbers had been exposed. Each wire fraud count carries a maximum sentence of 20 years and a $250,000 fine. A new court date for and arraignment on the new charges has yet to be set. The government case hinges on Sullivan's alleged failures to report a 2016 data breach to authorities, which prosecutors accuse him of having mischaracterized as a less severe security incident, together with his allegedly paying hackers hush money to conceal the breach. When hackers emailed Uber in November of 16 to inform it of the breach, they had perpetrated the ride-sharing service was in the process of providing detailed answers to the FTC stemming from the September 14 breach. Prosecutors say the person nominated by Uber to provide the sworn testimony to the FTC, Sullivan, should have immediately disclosed the breach to the FTC and in accordance with California data breach notification laws. So the 2 men who stole the data and demanded payment were arrested, I believe, and charged. Uber successfully identified the 2 men, secured new NDAs from them, bearing their true names. Sullivan was fired in 2017 after the new Uber CEO learned about the breach and the $100,000 payment. Sullivan himself is denying allegations. He has not responded to the new ones, but nonetheless, this is significant. There's a lot about this case that should make a CSO or CISO very uncomfortable. And this, folks, could be something that that hangs around here for a little while. So I'm going to keep watching this story. In fact, one of the things we're looking to do is to speak to the federal prosecutors on this. We've reached out to them to get an idea over why is this? And is he really being scapegoated? Was the decision-making that Sullivan made all by himself, or is the company throwing him under the bus since they experienced multiple security incidents in multiple years? There's a lot to this story that we have to ask, and I look forward to the trial so that we see actually what comes through of it. I wonder if there's any messages between Sullivan and senior managers or conversations or meetings that led to this being hushed down all the way through, especially when they were under new leadership at the time. So, serious stuff here, folks. All right. That's it for our practitioner brief here today. We'll be back again tomorrow as we wrap up 2021, heading into 2022. Thursday's show will be a party. I promise you that. We're going to be talking about 2021 and what it means. We'll have a few predictions to 2022 if the news cycle stays the way it is. If there's a new 0-day tomorrow, then, all hell breaks loose. But that's just the security world we live in. And that's the beauty of what we do. Folks, thanks so much for tuning in today. Thanks so much for being part of the show. Comments, questions, concerns, hit me up on my LinkedIn DM, and I'll do all of that. Show notes are right there. Please make sure to share it, like, comment, and subscribe. And go check out on YouTube the Hacking MFA webinar I did with Roger Grimes. It's an hour worth of your time. Roger details and shows how you're able to intercept two-factor authentication. So you definitely don't want to miss it. Folks, till then, and see you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day and stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.